the agents are really good at lying.
Yep.
Like there's number one thing where they have fake buyers. There's three things that I sort of value a lot more now than I did when I first started buying properties. The first one is cash flow.
How did you get into property in the first place?
So I made a lot of mistakes going into my first property. I've purchased over 260 properties.
Wow.
I've purchased over 10 properties for myself. Buying into the right market is really important because you got some people, that love a bargain, but really that's the thing that's going to stop them from getting into a property.
What's your one main piece of advice?
I'd say cash flow is king.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Bought and Built podcast. I'm here with the lead buyer's agent from Envision Property Buyers Agency, Nathan Prasad. Nathan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for putting this all together, Adam. I'm looking forward to sharing, some stories about my journey as a buyer's agent.
Fantastic. I want to start by asking, why did you want to do this podcast?
So there's a few things. I'm talking to investors all the time and I'm sharing some awesome stories where, there's some great takeaways because I've been buying properties for 5 years straight. I've purchased over 260 properties.
Wow.
I've purchased over 10 properties for myself. So I just wanted to create this podcast to just help property investors, just like first timers, people that are maybe at their second investment property and they're like, what do I do next? I want to share stories, tips and tricks to just help people unlock the next steps.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's wind it right back. How did you get here? How did you get into property in the first place?
So rewind it all the way back in 2016. I was 21 and I got my first job and then one of my mates bought a property. So I was like, oh, wow, if he can buy a property, I can too. And I was really motivated with Tony Robbins and sort of back then you'd watch YouTube and you have all these motivational guys and you just watch the same YouTube video over and over again. And I really wanted to build wealth and property seemed to be the vehicle. So then I managed to get a bit of a deposit, convinced my dad to help with part of that deposit, which was around 20 grand back then, as crazy as it sounds. So I managed to scrape together 20 grand.
But you're only 16 at this point.
No, it was 2016.
Oh, okay.
I was just turning 21.
20, well, still
Yep.
incredibly young. Okay, so you put a deposit together.
Yep. And then with this first property, I was only meant to spend $350,000. I went to all these inspections, had no idea, didn't know how to value property, didn't know what I was doing because I was quite naive at that age. And then, one of the sales agents goes, come and check out this property. It was in a suburb called Barony Heights. And
That's Brisbane, yeah?
Yep, in Logan.
Yep.
And essentially, he convinced me to buy this property for $400,000, which was above my budget.
Well above,
So then I ended up getting another $5 grand off my dad, which I eventually paid him back with a credit card. But when I went to go sign the contract at $400K, he just crossed it out on the day and wrote $420, and he said, this is the only way you're going to buy it. But I was so young, I had no idea, so I just signed the contract. I didn't even know what I was signing.
Wow.
But that was sort of the start of buying a property, and I kind of learned what not to do. So I made a lot of mistakes going into my first property, which I can go through to show, what the ramifications were when I wanted to go and scale out to my second property.
Sure. Well, let's explore that. What you'd overstepped your budget.
Yep.
You jumped in with, as you've admitted, without the knowledge you now have, or basically none. What were the ramifications? What did that mean for you down the line?
So I started getting into reading investment books, and then I was like, okay, the next phase is to pull the equity out of this property and go buy another property. I go to my mortgage broker. He goes, mate, we can't get a higher valuation because you've got the most expensive property in the suburb. And I was like, oh, damn, well, what do I do from here? And he's like, well, you can only save another deposit.
Yep.
But at that time, I was earning 65 grand a year. So I was like, that's near impossible. Now I've got a mortgage. So then I had to, pivot. And I was a building estimator. I was in a cadetship there. So then I had access to trades.
Well, that
cheap
was going to be my
material.
next question.
Yeah.
You do have a construction background, don't you?
Yep.
Yep.
And then, yeah, pretty much that's where the story goes. So I spent $5,000. I got new tiles, new shower screens, new curtains, just like decked out this house, and I put it online. And then I managed to sell it for $442,000.
Okay.
Yep. So I bought it for $420,000.
Yep. How much was the reno?
The reno was $5,000.
Okay.
So I ended up walking away, and I paid down the debt quite a bit as well because it was a granny flat. I lived in the granny flat,
Right.
and I rented out the front house.
Okay.
So there was a
strategy there.
There was a strategy there, and I got sucked in because I had a pool in a granny flat. But then I sold it, and I walked away with around $50,000.
Nice. And in what period of time?
That was 2 years.
Okay, that's pretty decent.
Huge amount of money.
For your first foray into it.
My first go, and then I was like, what am I going to do from here? So then I done the total opposite. I went as close as possible to the city in a suburb called Holland Park, and I brought the cheapest house in Holland Park, which was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house on a main road.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, so yeah, that's. But from there, I then bought a property for $500,000, and then immediately the market actually went sideways and went down. I don't know if people remember back in 2019, but I couldn't even sell it because it was on the main road because I wanted to leave my job and become a buyer's agent.
Sure.
But then the market picked up, and then I was able to sell that property in like 2020 for $960,000.
Wow.
So I brought it
because that's when the market really soared, didn't it?
And that's when I learned, oh wow, if you buy into the right market, you can essentially, double your money. Or I went from an 20 grand deposit. Now I walked away with that property with $460,000.
Yep.
Yeah. So then that began me then scaling out the portfolio.
Sure. So was there a moment in that period, or did it come later when you realised that buying property could be a profession for you?
Yeah. Well, what happened was when I realised I made all the mistakes with the Baronial Heights property, it kind of made me really curious to understand how does property work. So I started reading books about property, watching YouTubes, and essentially I just became obsessed with the real estate. And that's all I was talking about. I didn't have the money, and I was still like gathering the deposit, but I was just so, even to this day, really passionate about real estate.
Right.
And that drove me to becoming a buyer's agent.
Well, why the buyer's side and not the selling side?
So, when you first start to become a buyer's agent, you get all these guys that are trying to con you and I wouldn't say con you, get you into coming in to sell the house and land packages. You can make a lot of money selling them off the plan, where I almost ended up going to. But when you look at the numbers of those brand new off the plan builds, the guy that's selling it, they're making like 30 to 50 grand, and they're selling an overpriced asset.
Right.
Where it just couldn't sit with me. Like, I'm just like, I just can't do this because, most of the people that are buying these off the plan apartments or house and land packages, they're just mum and dads.
Yep.
They're like, my sister and her partner, they've got their kids. I've got, brothers and sisters that got kids. That's all I think about when I'm helping people buy a property. It's such a big thing. If they make a mistake, it doesn't just cost that family. It costs them and their kids, and then, means they can't. So, yeah, that was a massive moral.
It cascades down, doesn't it? The ramifications.
I just wanted to do something that was actually going to help people.
Sure. Now, you mentioned 260 properties is what you've actually, they're the sales that you've actually been involved in buying for yourself and for your clients. Is there one thing that they've all got in common?
Yeah. So, there's a number of things that you want to make sure is going to be a good deal. So first of all, you want to make sure you're buying into the right market at the right time.
Yep.
So luckily I was in Brisbane, ironically, one of the fastest growing, capital cities. And then I grew up there. So then I got to understand, and I was learning about data and all of these things that I do now along the way. So I was just really lucky, right place, right time. but there was timing the market. So when I first started, I was buying heavily inner city, and then there was cash flow, and a lot of people now these days think, oh, go inner city, go buy in those areas for 1.5 million with a $600 rent. I don't think that's the right time for it. And I have a lot of these conversations with investors. I think buying into the right market is really important. And it sounds like a very general term, but some people have these strong stigmas. And I know because I work with a lot of investors, they've got these ideas around how investing works. And this is what they thought was right, which was probably right 10 years ago, but the playing field has changed.
Yep.
And it constantly changes every 2 to 3 years.
Yep. And I think that's where a buyer's agent and why buyer's agents have become so prevalent and so popularly used now is the knowledge base on the buying side. A lot of, obviously just about everyone uses an agent to sell because of their skill set and knowledge around the market on selling, but it's become so important to know the market on the buying side now. And you've just mentioned it does change as much as it does on the sell side. So why not have someone in your corner who knows that to help you avoid the mistakes? What mistakes have you made and have you seen along the way with buyers approaching buying property?
So there's a number of things where I believe buyers make mistakes. And the first phase is they just rely on what's on real estate and domain. So you hear about off-market and pre-market properties. When you're buying into a momentum market like Brisbane or Perth or Adelaide where it's going up so fast and you're just going on realestate.com, that's very stupid on those types of markets. Maybe if there's a market and it's plateauing and it's going sideways, like Victoria at this present time, but you want to be buying pre-market and off-market because that's where you can capture 30, 50, there's ones where I've purchased like hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s below market value because the market moves so much.
Yep.
Another aspect is negotiations. A lot of buyers, because they'll talk to me and I'll talk to the agent, so they don't get to hear what's going on with the agent. I kind of filter it. But, the agents are really good at lying.
Yep.
Like there's number one thing where they have fake buyers. And if you don't know your market, like I know the market that I'm buying in, I'm like, nah, he is talking.
And their tips and tricks and
I don't know. Nah, like let's walk away. Those are points where you can walk away, but there's also aspects where you don't walk away, where it's like maybe an extra 10 or 20 grand. And it's been on the other side where I have had to convince the buyer to take the deal.
Yep.
Like I've had to push them so hard.
Because it's a good deal.
I know it's a good deal. And come settlement day, they always say, thank you so much for pushing me. Because you got some people, that love a bargain. But really, that's the thing that's going to stop them from getting into a property. And that's like one of the main reasons why they would use me. Because a lot of people can't get over themselves. And then finally, due diligence, looking at flood maps, easements, comparable sales. Your average Joe does not do.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I do a lot of work with real estate agents in the podcast space, and one thing I keep coming back to is their clients, and it's the same with yours, whether they're buyers or sellers. Most of these people only flow into this space for a short amount of time, a couple of times in their life, and don't give a crap about it any other time. So your knowledge in that space is not going to be what it needs to be to get the absolute right deal and get everything right, which is where your expertise on the buying side and obviously a selling agents comes in there. I mean, you mentioned, off-market properties. I don't think a lot of people know a lot about that. And I know we're going to do a full episode on that specifically, but, a really good point. So, mate, you've now been involved in 260 transactions on properties. What do you know now, or what are the most important things you know now that you wish you'd known at at property number one?
So there's three things that I sort of value a lot more now than I did when I first started buying properties. The first one is cash flow. So when I started buying properties, interest rates hit near bloody zero, and it was much easier to hold property. So, you could buy all these $1 million properties and they're still, neutral, negative, or positive cash flow. The other aspect is location and using data. So when you can look at the data, look at long-term trends and short-term trends, you can actually spot areas that have maybe hit the peak of their cycle, which is really good information to know. And then also, look at areas that are starting to build their momentum. So for me, I, transitioned from buying the inner city of Brisbane to 15 kilometers out. And people were like, why are you not buying in Holland Park and Camp Hill anymore? It's because, the data and everything and cash flow pointed towards 12 Ks out. So we bought those for 500-600 and boom, they doubled. And then we went 30 Ks out and then, so forth and so forth. And finally, the last one is more around doing the due diligence, like really getting into that property, understanding, when was it built? What can you do with it? Is there aspects like adding granny flats, or if there's like flood overlays and doing your comparable analysis? I feel like people don't go deep enough with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a matter of looking at surrounding suburbs to understand where that property is at.
Yep.
Because sometimes you don't have the data. Yep. And you have to go off your gut, and that pays dividends as well if you know what you're doing.
Sure. And that's something that you would have a skill you would have built over the experience you've had, knowing data versus gut at various different times. And I love the value that that buyers agents bring that that a lot of people don't see. It's the little things. You might go to an open home for a client and know that the agent is there on a waterfront while it's high tide, and you think, well, hang on, let's come back and have a look at this when it's at low tide, because your view's going to be a lot different. We're right near a school here. What's this going to look like at 3 p.m. on a Monday? Now, a lot of buyers don't think about, but you guys do. So I'm really looking forward as we bring out this series to all the little things that you guys do that that people do not understand the value of. But mate, before we sort of get towards wrapping up this first episode, what does the next 260 properties look like for you?
So we're still buying across the Brisbane region at this point in time, but now, a lot of my repeat clients will scaling towards, Victoria, to be honest, Victoria, right. Tasmania. And over the last 5 years, one thing I really wish I knew more about, and I did buy more, which I started doing towards the back end of buying investment properties, townhouses, villas, buying below replacement costs. Once you know that, you just you start looking at property so differently, and you start to understand the biggest word, which is replacement cost.
Well, I want to do a full episode on that with you at some point too, because that is a huge thing that most lay people don't understand. Yeah. I still don't fully understand it. So I'd love to do a full episode with you on that. You have been Brisbane predominantly, but you're expanding now into Melbourne. You've actually got a small team now as well.
Yeah, so I've got, my assistant, I've got other team members that are on the ground and because we're targeting quite a few more areas, I need more people calling agents. That's the biggest lever we've got, is calling real estate agents to find those pre-market and off-market deals.
Yep, fantastic. And that is going to be our next episode. So if you're listening to this and you don't know about pre-market and off-market properties, please do tune into to episode number 2. But look, for someone listening who's about to buy their first or second property, what's your one main piece of advice to them today?
I'd say cash flow is king. Making sure you run your numbers, making sure you can afford it, because they're properties a long game. You're aiming for a hold period of 7 to 15 years. So if you make any type of mistake, because I know it's hard to learn about the data and where to buy. So maybe just focus on the cash flow, because, property is forgiving.
Yep. But look, that's where you come in, and that's where you can absolutely value add. So, look, thanks so much, Nathan, for joining us on the first episode. Really looking forward to building out this series with you with some incredibly valuable advice for property buyers in Brisbane, the Gold Coast, and as you expand into Victoria and other areas. So Nathan's put together a really valuable checklist for investors and buyers on things to be aware of when you are buying property. Now, you can find that at his website, envisionproperty.com.au, as well as all the other information about his services and how his team can help you. That's envisionproperty.com.au. We hope you've enjoyed this very first episode of the Bought and Built podcast, and we really look forward to you joining us on our next episode. Nathan, thanks very much.
Thanks, Adam.